I'm Brandi Kruse, and this is Politics Unpacked. Politics Unpacked is brought to you by our friends at Future 42, making Washington a place where all can prosper. Sign up for their newsletter at future42.org. Let's unpack week 2 of the legislative session. A second and third of 6 initiatives to the legislature have officially been certified by the Secretary of State's office. Initiative 2117 would repeal key aspects of Governor Jay Inslee's Climate Commitment Act, including the carbon auctions that have led to an increase in prices at the pump. In a statement, initiative backer Brian Haywood called it a, quote, triple tax on consumers, adding costs at the gas pump, the grocery store, and on home heating bills. Initiative 2081 has also been certified. It would allow parents more access to instructional material and would keep them informed about their child's medical care. Meanwhile, Republicans in Olympia made a motion to try to fast-track the first initiative that was certified, having to do with police pursuits, to a public committee hearing.
We have a moral responsibility to the 420,000 Washingtonians who signed the initiative to give them a voice and an opportunity to explain to the committee why they signed that initiative and allow the legislature to consider allow that committee to consider the measure.
That motion failed along party lines, with every House Democrat voting no. Also this week, the U.S. Supreme Court has declined to hear a lawsuit challenging Washington state's capital gains tax. Critics have argued that it is, in fact, an illegal income tax in the state of Washington, although supporters of it labeled it an excise tax. An initiative to repeal the capital gains tax has not yet been certified, but that could happen any day. Democrats are unlikely to adopt it, which means the most plausible path is through voters. And now for bills to watch. This week, House Bill 2205 got a hearing in Olympia. It would help protect signature gatherers by putting in place a 25-foot buffer zone around where signatures are being collected for initiatives and referendums. That means if people were to want to protest the initiatives, they would have to stay at least 25 feet away. The Secretary of State's office testified in favor of the bill.
It's important that everyone on any side of any issue should be protected and should have their rights.
Here's the bill's sponsor, Representative Cheney of Battleground.
We wanted to make sure that we protected the First Amendment rights of both signature gatherers and those who are opposed. They still have First Amendment rights as well. But we wanted to make sure that there was some breathing space between those two groups. I think you're probably aware, and your listeners are, of an incident at a Costco where that wasn't the case. Someone who was very upset with the initiative gatherers came and tried to disrupt, and I'm sure that's happened countless times around the state. And so we kind of crafted it with that, again, those First Amendment. I'm a big pro First Amendment supporter. I think that everybody has the right to speech. I should add peaceable speech. I think that's an important component. But we wanted to make sure that that everybody could have the chance to be in a proximity, but not in a physically dangerous way, or actually pushing and shoving. And so that's kind of how we drafted the bill, with enough of a space in between that it could accommodate both pro and con groups.
Among those opposed to the bill is the ACLU of Washington, which argues that it would violate people's First Amendment rights. House Bill 2178 would give sex offenders a path off lifetime supervision. Hundreds signed up to testify in favor of the bill, including some offenders currently under such conditions.
For every assigned CCO I've had to rebuild a relationship based upon mutual trust and understanding, which can take months to establish.
Several gun control bills have been introduced this session in Olympia, including Senate Bill 5444, which would expand the list of public places where carrying a firearm would be prohibited. The bill would add public transit, among other areas, to the list of gun-free zones. There was also a hearing this week on House Bill 2095, which would send the balance from your unused gift cards to the state's unclaimed property fund. Advocates say it could be spent on programs for the public good. Meanwhile, opponents argue it is not the government's money to take. For more on what happened in week 2 of the legislative session, let's check in with our friends from the Center Square. Brett Davis, you were saying it's alliteration. We got pot, property tax hikes, maybe, and paid leave.
Right, just the way you planned it, right, Brandi?
Yep, 3 Ps. That's the only thing I'm allowing you to talk about this week are things that begin with P. So let's start with the pot. There's a bill that would limit high-potency pot in the state.
Right, so that's House Bill 2320. It would raise awareness of the dangers associated with high-potency cannabis. It would also fund medical interventions for individuals most at risk, and it would raise the minimum age for purchasing high-THC marijuana to 25. And of course, when I'm talking about THC, I'm talking about the psychoactive element of the drug that, makes people loopy. That's probably not a medical term, loopy, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. I was surprised to find out how much stronger marijuana is now. It's been like a tenfold increase since it was legalized in 2012. I had no idea.
All right, let's move on to the property tax lid. This is an issue that's drawing a lot of criticism, certainly from the right, which would be a tripling in the property tax lid currently. So just explain the proposal in a nutshell.
So basically, it could triple Washington's 1% limit on annual property tax increases. The bill would allow a property tax increase up to 3% annually. This will be based on inflation per the Consumer Price Index as determined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And from population changes in the most two recent years, as estimated by the state's Office of Financial Management.
So paid leave, that's been an issue we've discussed in the state for a long time. A new bill, a proposal, would expand that to include requiring small businesses to provide paid leave. What are the concerns there?
It's House Bill 1959 would require businesses with fewer than 50 employees to offer paid leave. Of course, the big concern is cost. I mean, this is a cost for businesses, and that's on top of, the state has the highest state minimum wage in the nation, increased in, workers' compensation, about 10% over the last 2 years. So, it's cost on top of costs. I mean, I'm sure the people putting forward this legislation have the best of intentions, but, everything's about trade-offs. So it'll be interesting to see if this passes, how it impacts businesses. Will they be able to hire more people, or will they lay off people? Who knows?
Yeah, and all that I'm sure is going to be debated in Olympia. Brett Davis, we appreciate it. How can people, if they're new to the Center Square, how can they follow the work that you guys are doing?
Just go to thecentersquare.com, click on Washington State, and there you go.
Love it. See you next week.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That has been Politics Unpacked as we wrap up this second week of the legislative session. I'm Brandi Kruse. Have a great weekend. Politics Unpacked is brought to you by our friends at Future 42, making Washington a place where all can prosper. Sign up for their newsletter at future42.org. To support Undivided and our content like this, you can subscribe for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com.